Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Chronicles of the Caliphate, the rise, reign, and ruin of Islam's first empires. I'm your host, Ham of Jedrosia. Perhaps the unluckiest man in all of history is Eliezer of Damascus, the Pete Best of the ancient world. Best was in the Beatles, who got replaced with Ringo Starr early on. Like Best, Eliezer got replaced by the ultimate McCartney, the sovereign lord in the sky. If we can leave late antiquity of Arabia for the Bronze Age Levant, I will tell you a grand tale, a story that still reverberates to our day, a story that is the genesis of this entire affair that I'm embarking on. With a pun very much intended, this story is told in the first book of the Bible, Genesis. A man by the name of Abram began his long journey from the Ur of the Chaldeans in Mesopotamia under the command of his Lord and God. His travels took him to the land of Canaan and then to the land of Egypt. Fearing for his life, he told his wife Sarai that her beauty will cause the Egyptians to be infatuated with her and will definitely kill him for it. Therefore, it is better that she lies and tells their new hosts that he is merely her brother. So it came to pass that the Egyptians were mesmerized by her beauty. Most of all, their king, the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh took Sarai into his household. He honored Abram with riches, cattle, and slaves. Abram's patron god had other plans though. He visited plagues upon the house of the Pharaoh, and he, the Pharaoh, learned of Abram's ruse. The Pharaoh returned Sarai to her husband, chiding him for concocting this calamity on him, and ordered the whole lot, Abram and his wife, all their wealth and cattle and slave, out of Egypt. Abram returned to Canaan a rich man. He had already made a deal with his nephew, Lot, to divide the land between them. Lot headed east to the plains of the Jordan. Abram remained in Canaan, which his Lord and God promised him. Raise your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward and southward, and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring can be counted. Rise up, walk through the length and the breadth of this land, for I will give it to you. Abram was without a child, and his heir was none other than Eliezer of Damascus. This was not to be. Abram's Lord and God promised the land to his offspring, and offspring he shall have. Sarai, Abram's wife, had an Egyptian slave, a woman named Hagar. She volunteered her to be a surrogate, to which we hear no objection from Abram. Now, I want to get this right. The text in Genesis says, she, Hagar, looked with contempt on her mistress when she conceived a child. Sarai naturally evoked the Lord to decry the injustice done to her, that a slave now has the audacity to scoff at her. Your slave is in your power. Do to her as you please. That's all Abram said for Sarai to chase Hagar away. Hagar ran into the desert, pregnant and distraught, into the barren and hostile land of Shur, a wilderness between Sinai and Arabia. She took refuge by a spring of water. An angel of the Lord found her, and after reminding her that she is a slave of Sarai, he bade her to return to her mistress and submit to her. But before the angel of the Lord departed, he proclaimed a prophecy. a prophecy that, in my personal opinion, is the most profound one found in the entire Bible. Lines that were written centuries before they came true. Divine providence or a far-sighted geopolitical analysis? The angel of the Lord said to Hagar, "I will so greatly multiply your offspring that they cannot be counted for multitude. Now you have conceived and shall bear a son. You shall call him Ishmael, for the Lord has given heed to your affliction. He shall be a wild ass of a man, with his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he shall live at odds with all his kin." Abraham went on to become Abraham, and Sarai became Sarah. Keeping with the biblical tradition, the inheritance of that divine covenant skipped the firstborn and went to Sarah's son, Isaac. Ishmael and his mother were cast out, exiled to the wilderness of Paran. The boy grew and became a great bowman. Isaac fathered Esau and Jacob. The inheritance once more went to the secondborn. Jacob fathered 12 sons of his own, and they became the 12 tribes of Israel. Their stories, legends, and myths carry on for centuries, up to and including an apocalyptic prophet and Messiah in the first century, Jesus. The text in Genesis made one more promise to the exiled and forgotten Ishmael, that he will also father 12 princes of his own. Clearly a parallel to the 12 sons of his nephew Jacob. The text even gives us their names. In a few chapters later, Abraham dies, and his 2 sons, Ishmael and Isaac, bury him in Hebron. Here the text reminds us again of Hagar, the Egyptian slave of Sarah, who bore Abraham his firstborn. The text lists his progeny, the 12 princes: Nebaioth, Kedar, Edbil, Misbam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema, ending Ishmael's story with his death amongst his people at the ripe old age of 137. The last line speaks of Ishmael's descendants. They settled from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt in the direction of Assyria. The Jews wrote that story, and they knew exactly whom they meant. I imagine that Jewish rabbis and Christian priests remembered those lines of the prophecy to Hagar when they saw a mighty army marching out of the desert millennia later. Those rabbis and priests called them Ishmaelites. They grew into a multitude that cannot be counted. That army called itself Arab and called Ishmael their father. That Arab army knew this story as well. In a very reductive way, they marched to reclaim a birthright, the birthright of Ishmael. Islamic hagiography laid the claim that Muhammad is a direct descendant of Ishmael. But that is not an Islamic invention. These Arabs knew their progenitor. They knew that the sacred temple in Mecca was built by Abraham and Ishmael. They knew that it was Ishmael, not Isaac, who was bound and offered in sacrifice. The Arabs knew their birthright. By the 7th century, they marched to reclaim it. Funnily enough, it was not the first time. It was not the first time that camels-bearing Arab warriors rode out from the south to the detriment of the major powers in Mesopotamia and in the Levant. In the histories of civilizations, there was always a profound fear of the barbaric savages. To the Greeks, they were the steppe peoples like the Scythians. They do look like centaurs, so well adjusted to their horse saddles. To the Romans, they were the Germanic tribes that kept Rome in their sacking corsairs. To the Persians, they were the Messagetai and their warrior queen, Tomiris, who, as the story told by Herodotus, killed Cyrus the Great and dipped his decapitated head in blood. The garrison walls of civilization were mostly able to hold off these barbaric marauders. I say mostly because the Mongols happened. The Arabs south of the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia were such people. Perhaps the empires of Islam somewhat obfuscated that image from collective memory. But that fear dogged the great empires of the ancient world. In the halls of Nineveh, Babylon, and Thebes, they had to contend with the great power of the Qedarites. Unlike the legend of Abraham and Ishmael, there are factual historical records of a mighty kingdom of the Arabs in northwestern Arabia starting from the 9th century BC. Their capital, Domat al-Jandal, is heavily featured in New Assyrian and New Babylonian records, as well as in the records of ancient kingdoms of Israel and Judah, Moab and Aram Damascus. Their queens, yes, ancient Arab queens, warred and allied with pretty much everyone in their long history. Their kingdom controlled the trade routes running from southern Arabia. A confederation of tribes which included the much more famous Nabateans of Petra ruled the deserts that bordered Mesopotamia, Syria, and Palestine. They roamed from the edges of the Nile Delta to the Persian Gulf. Sharing their name with the second son of Ishmael adds a certain biblical intrigue to this ancient kingdom, giving rise to the second group of Arab nations in the process, the Northern Arabs, descendant from the biblical patriarchs, the Adnanids. The legendary accounts are clear. The Adnanids stood in great contrast with their southern neighbors, the Qahtanids. They claimed their ancestry from Ishmael for one. More practically, they developed an entirely separate branch of their common Semitic language with their own script. A script that is a precursor to the modern Arabic we have today. Even modern scholarship in Arabic call these people the Arabized Arabs. Islamic sources saw that the person of Adnan as a great-great-grandson of one of the 12 princes of Ishmael. Sources differ whether it was Nebaioth or Kedar, as opposed to the Qahtanids, who trace their legendary lineage to Shem, son of Noah, directly. Even then, some Islamic scholars claim that even these southern Arabs belong to the Ishmaelite line. Despite the differences, the cultural and linguistic aspects are enough to distinguish the two into distinct nations. As was the case with the Qahtanid tribal configurations, so too the Adnanid tribes rivaled them in diversity and fragmentation. More so, these tribes will have an important role to play in the empires to come. Adnan, his son Ma'ad, and grandson Nizar are considered the progenitors of these tribes. Two major branches emerged, with the third having less of an impact but equal in prestige. The two branches were Rabi'a and Mudar, the third being Iyad. Rabi'a and Mudar have a prominent role in Arab tribal histories. Their competition in war, wealth, and prestige are the stuff of legend in pre-Islamic Arabia. From Rabi'a, we get Abdul Qais bin Qusay. We get Bakr and Taghlib, sons of Wa'il. From Bakr, we get Hanifa and Ajal. Mudar, on the other hand, fathered two branches, Qais Aylan and Ilyas. As for the former, the tribes of Salim bin Mansur, Hawazin, and their descendants Thaqif, perhaps the second most important tribe in Islam's first empires. They also gave rise to Ghatfan, Dhibyan, Abs, Ashja, and Ghuna. Ilyas had the distinction of issuing the tribes of Tamim bin Murrah, Hudayl bin Madraka, Asad bin Khuzaymah, and the evergreen tribe of Kinana, as Kinana was the great-grandfather of Fahr, also known as Quraysh. Delving deeper into Quraysh, we find Jamah and Saham, sons of Husays, Uday ibn Ka'b, Makhzum bin Murrah, and his brother Tim, Zohra bin Kilab, Abduddar bin Qusay, Asad bin Abdul Uzza, and finally Abdul Manaf. Zooming in on Abd al-Manaf, he had 4 sons: Abd Shams, Nawfal, Abd al-Muttalib I, and Hashim. Hashim was the great-grandfather of Muhammad, the founder of Islam, and Ali, the founder of the Alids. Hashim was also the grandfather of Al-Abbas, the founder of the Abbasids, while Abd al-Shams, on the other hand, fathered Umayyah, the founder of the Umayyads. The Adnanids soon spread across Arabia like their Qahtan counterparts. The Abd al-Qais tribes from Rabi'a sought the eastern coast of Arabia. The Bakr bin Wa'il tribe ruled over Bahrain on behalf of the Persians until the Islamic conquests, while Hanifa tribes sought Yamama, away inland, where they had the distinct honor of raising a rival prophet to Muhammad. The Taghlib tribe moved northward to the deserts of Iraq and the banks of the Euphrates. The Tamim settled in the Basra countryside. The Salim tribe extended in northern Hijaz, settling near Yathrib, Medina later on, and Khaybar. As for the Thaqif, they moved to Ta'if, a town to the south of Mecca. Along with the Hawazins, they settled in areas surrounding the Meccan countryside. The Asads ended up in northern Arabia, between the towns of Taima and Kufa. In Tihama, the tribes of Kinana remained with Quraysh, taking center stage in Mecca. These tribal distinctions will go on to shape the history of the Islamic empires. Old feuds were never forgotten, prestige and honor always a source of strife. Not to mention that a single branch from a single tribe opted to be the imperial lords over the rest of the Arabian tribes. Centuries later, these feuds will turn political, and later on, sectarian even. Civil wars and bloodshed became part of the legacy of the successors of Muhammad, the founder of this state and creed. The Hashemites might have had the eternal honor of being distinguished with prophethood, a unique honor that could not be replicated. Everything else was for grabs. I might not be ready to fully claim that these tribal contentions were the wherewithal of these conflicts. I contend, though, that they are a major contributor to them. These tribal wars did not end till the formation of the modern Gulf monarchies in the 19th and 20th centuries. That bitterness seeped into the great Arab revolt of World War I, and Lawrence of Arabia was a witness to them. History is riddled with these cataclysmic fractures, whether exemplified by the Diadochi of Alexander the Great or the multicolored khanates that followed Genghis Khan. The Arabs have no unique distinction in this regard, only in as much that they continue to shape the cultural heritage of our modern times. We will end our episode here. Next time, we will closely examine the Arab kingdoms of late antiquity to see what was going on politically on the eve of the 7th century Arabia. We will also examine an aspect of Arabian life that Islam was a direct rebuke of: the polytheistic religions of the Arabs. This has been Chronicles of the Caliphate. I am Hamid Jadrozia. Until next time, walk carefully through the sands of empire.